You have within you the power to create a series of ideas for yourself that will erase obstacles to your highest calling. When you imagine that you're free of any need to use excuses, you'll ultimately act on what you're imagining. So practice the process of envisioning precisely what your life would look like and feel like if it were impossible to enlist your excuse patterns. A good way to begin is by getting accustomed to visualizing exactly who you are as if you've already arrived. Seeing who you want to be is already here. Our poet friend, Mr. Blake, is saying that we imagined these self-limiting ideas before they became facts in our lives. Memetics, genetics, early childhood reinforcements, cultural conditioning, and years of thinking limiting thoughts join forces to become the excuses that have come to feel like reality. If William Blake's observation is true for you, its corollary applies as well. In other words, if you make the excuses begone shift and hold fast to its ideas, then you prove to yourself just how powerful your imagination is. This is why I included the words already here concerning the way you want to see yourself. For all intents and purposes, what you actively imagine is authentically and undeniably already here. So you can absolutely change from self-defeating excuses to self-enhancing actions. Once your new thinking habits are truly in place, it's the same as saying that you're already actualizing what you want. When I was in my early 20s, I used the imagination practice on the excuse, I'm too tired. I'd heard this so frequently that it finally became a mind virus I mimicked and employed regularly. It was a convenient but debilitating excuse because thinking and talking about how tired I was made me more fatigued than I actually was. The more I said the words, I'm tired, the more my energy seemed to be depleted, even when there was no physical reasons behind this. One morning, after listening to a friend tell me that he was too exhausted to carry out a planned weekend retreat, I decided to end my use of this excuse permanently. I pledged to never again tell others or myself how tired I was, and I began imagining myself in possession of unlimited energy. I didn't change my sleep habits or take energy supplements or change my lifestyle. All I did was imagine myself as a high-energy person. I was able to change the way I viewed myself in relationship to fatigue and started to see myself as a never-tired person. This all started with a new thought, which was placed first in my imagination, and to this day, some 40 years later, I've steadfastly refused to even think I'm tired. One of Ralph Waldo Emerson's essays includes a line that has always made an impact on me. Imagination, he said, is a very high sort of seeing. To me, this is seeing with a capital S. Seeing myself with boundless energy all those years ago allowed me to eliminate the obstacles of fatigue and energy depletion, and I created a new me in those imaginative moments. It will be difficult, and it will take a long time. These two similar excuses are frequently substituted for action. Now, imagine that you're incapable of creating these thoughts. In the same way that you can't imagine the mental activity of a jellyfish without ears or eyes that lives miles below the ocean surface, neither can you conceive of a task as being difficult or taking a long time. So if it were absolutely impossible for you to think this way, what would your life be like? Whatever it is that you'd like to accomplish, be it becoming an artist, creating your own musical composition, starting a new business, repairing your relationship with your parents or your spouse or anyone else, building a new home, getting into physical shape, anything at all, how would your world change if you couldn't even conceive of the idea that it would be difficult or take a long time? Without these excuses, what would life look like? It's a safe bet that you'd immediately initiate action propelling you in the direction of the fulfillment of your dreams. You'd talk to others who had similar kinds of dreams and then emerge successfully. You'd have a lot of energy, and you'd be actively engaged in the process of living the life you imagine. You'd attract synchronistic assistance and notice the right people, the right events, and the right circumstances persistently showing up. Why? Because you'd be acting just like the source of all creation does. You'd be aligned with a universe that says, yes, you can, and gives you the tools to prove it. You'd have no hesitation, no fear that something would be difficult or take too long. You'd happily do rather than explain or complain. And then, without these excuses, how would you feel? With these limitations completely out of the way, let me hazard a guess that you'd feel ecstatic and finally completely on purpose. A sense of freedom would delight you because avoidance of your true dharma would no longer exist. You'd feel enormous contentment rather than worrying about what you're avoiding or where you're going. There would be no focus on your destination, since too long would no longer exist for you, and the now of the journey would provide the success and happiness you desire. You'd experience a great deal of bliss because you'd be guided by your creativity and initiative rather than fear of disappointment, and joy would rule your life. And without these excuses, what alternative thoughts would you have? Rather than focusing on what you can't do because it's difficult and takes a long time, you'd think like this: this is definitely something that I can and will create for myself. I know I can do anything I put my mind to. I anticipate that this is within my ability to readily accomplish it. I have no fear because I recognize that whatever guidance and assistance I require is available. I'm excited, thrilled, and elated about fulfilling this dream. I realize that the thoughts I have are meshed with enthusiasm and passion, and that nothing can stop me. In fact, I'm certain that whatever I need to actualize my dreams is already on its way. I contentedly watch for what the universe sends me. This gift of feeling good or feeling God within comes from serving and surrendering rather than asking and demanding. There's no room for blame in your life as long as you live with kindness. And excuses, regardless of their form, are all about blame. Blaming your past, blaming the economy, blaming your perceived personal flaws, blaming God, blaming your parents, blaming your children or your spouse, blaming your DNA. There's no shortage of circumstances, people, and events to blame, and there's no shortage of blame itself. When you shift to compassion, blame disappears. So no matter what you may want for yourself, discover how you can want it more for someone else, and then make that shift. In that contemplative moment, compassion will eradicate finger-pointing and trump excuse-making. And you'll begin to think like God thinks, serving, offering, giving, and loving freely. I've certainly found that when I remember to nurture kindness and courtesy, everything in my life seems to move towards more harmony and peace, to say nothing of how much better I feel when I'm giving rather than wanting. I heard the Dalai Lama speak on compassion some years back, and the essence of his message contained these 2 points. 1, that compassion is the single most important quality that humanity needs to learn. This is the way to find happiness and health and to feel successful. And 2, that war and violence would become extinct in 1 generation if, beginning at the age of 5, children were taught to meditate on compassion for an hour a week for the rest of their lives. Such is the power of a compassionate approach to life, which is truly thinking of others and living by the ancient golden rule. The very second you feel yourself retreating to excuses, repeat the mantra, "How may I serve?" Then act upon the answers you receive. You'll become aligned with universal mind, which is always giving, and the bonus is that you'll notice the universe asking you back, "How may I serve you?" As your compassion for others flows back to you, remember the truth I've written about many times in this book. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. So make compassion be what you are. Passion can only be experienced in this current moment. Now is where everything takes place. So your relationship to life is truly your relationship to the present moment. I love the definition of compassion offered by historian Arnold Toynbee. Quote, "Compassion is the desire that moves the individual self to widen the scope of its self-concern to embrace the whole of the universal self." Unquote. In any given moment of your life, when you embrace another beyond any concern for yourself, you are living compassion. You're also making it impossible to employ excuses. This is the time to widen your scope beyond self-concern and embrace a universal self that includes everyone, especially the person who is before you. Recognize that this moment is your power. Seize it and extend compassion without regard for yourself. And remember that your appointment with life is always in the present. Who are the most important people to work with? We often hear about and respond to the importance of offering assistance to others in drastic need in faraway places. As we try to work towards bringing about world peace, we join organizations dedicated to improving the lives of those who are most needy. Yet this doesn't answer this second question adequately. Whoever is in your immediate space is the most important person for you to work with, be it friend, family member, co-worker, or total stranger. Therefore, extend kindness to whomever you see before you. As Tolstoy reminds you, you can't know that you'll ever have dealings with anyone else. This is your moment, and the person to work with is right here. So the lesson is, don't look beyond the moment. Now is a perfect opportunity. Whoever is in your presence is the one who is available for your compassion. As the Vietnamese master Thich Nhat Hanh once observed, if you cannot make your own child happy, how do you expect to be able to make anyone else happy? If all our friends in the peace movement or of service communities of any kind do not love and help one another, whom can we love and help? Are we working for other humans, or are we just working for the name of an organization? And 3, what is the most important thing to do at all times? Doing good is the equivalent of doing God. We're not here to conquer others, to wage war, to build towering temples to our deities, to become number one, to win anything or defeat anyone. No, we are here to be like God, or to be good, to serve, to reach out, to allow, not interfere, and be humble wherever we go. Give your ego a rest, and live compassionately by being a decent human being.
The idea of just saying to myself, okay, I'm going to go 19 years and never have a drink again. That's just enough to send you off on a binge, isn't it? But you can do easy things, and you can get anywhere from here. You ever hear the line, a journey of 1,000 miles? What? Begins with one step. That's right out of the Tao Te Ching. That was Lao Tzu. It's so simple. So when you think about balance in your life, think like this about being in balance. You have a dream, and your dream is to live a life that goes a certain way, that looks a certain way, that feels a certain way. You have a dream that you would like to be able to attract prosperity into your life, that you would like to live a prosperous life. My favorite example, I did it on the PBS show, of the lady sitting next to me from San Francisco who was flying back from Maui after having just done a wedding. And I said to her, what do you do? And she said, I'm a photographer. And I said, oh, how's it going? And she said, well, I'm never going to get rich at it. Now, this is just a thought. Is it true? I don't know if it's true. How can that be? How can you know if that's true, that you're never going to get rich? You don't know. So I said to her, well, would you like to get rich? That's just what I always ask when people ask. Well, she said, well, of course. She said, who wouldn't want to be rich? Everybody wants to be able to buy the things they want. We all want that. I said, so let me see if I understand. You would like to get rich. That's your dream. But what you offer up to that dream is that it'll never happen. That's out of balance. That's the kind of balance I'm speaking about. The kind of balance that you begin to realize that there's a misalignment, if you will, between what it is that you are thinking and what it is that you offer up in the way of habits to make those dreams a reality. I call it principles for creating habits to match your desire. Listen to this quote. It's from Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, want, like what you want, is a growing giant whom the coat of have was never large enough to cover. Want is a growing giant whom the coat of have was never large enough to cover. That is, what you want and what you have are completely and totally out of balance. And Lao Tzu says this to you through me. When you put your attention on what you intend to create and you stay aligned with the way, with the source from which you came, it will show up. It has to. It has to. So that all of the deficiencies, all of the things that you want but are not able to manifest, have not manifested yet into your life, all of it is not because the universe isn't working with you. It will. It's because you are not a vibrational match, an energetic match to what it is that you would like to create. And all today is about is learning to change the way you look at your life and understanding that the life that you're living will change just by your changing your opinion about it. It's so beautifully freeing to not be concerned any longer with whether or not what you would like to have is going to show up. If you would like to accomplish something, you must first expect it of yourself. And my question to you is, what do you expect of yourself? Do you expect to be able to perform miracles, to attract into your life the kind of prosperity that you are entitled to? Do you expect that you can manifest the kind of relationships that you would like? In order to be able to have these kinds of expectations for yourself, you have to make a dramatic change, a dramatic shift. You must change what's possible for you.
And as you know that there's more to you than just this body and this ego that is in that body, you recognize, I am a divine being, and this highest part of myself is where I want to begin my efforts at becoming a manifester. And here are just a few suggestions that I would recommend you do on a daily basis to get you to the place where you can learn to live from this highest self. The first of these is, whenever you're about to act, to do anything, if you have any conflict at all, you can ask yourself the question, is what I'm about to say, is what I'm about to do going to bring me peace, more peace in my life, or is it going to bring a sense of turmoil? Is there going to be some struggle, some anxiety as a result of what I'm going to say or what I'm going to do? If the answer is peace, then it's your highest self. If the answer is turmoil, struggle, anxiety, stress, then the answer is your ego. So now you've identified, and now you know how to act. The way to act is with the way that will bring you peace. Even if it seems inconsistent, the way to act is the way that will bring you peace. The second thing to do is to start to learn to go beyond this restriction that you've experienced in the physical plane. The restrictions of the physical plane are many. Begin to say, I can transcend that. In your mind, begin to look at yourself as living in that physical plane, but that's not who you are. So figure out ways in your own consciousness to just get past all of these limitations that are a part of your body and your world. The third is, wherever you go, refuse to defend yourself to anyone or to anything on the earth plane. You don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to prove yourself. You can just quietly be an effective human being and not get yourself into that position where you're arguing with someone over the rightness of how you feel. Just let go of that. And the higher part of you is saying, I want peace. I want peace. It's always there. Keep that in mind. And finally, learn to surrender and to trust in that wisdom that created you. The act of surrendering is letting go. Once you surrender and once you let go, you find yourself a whole lot freer in your life. This air that you're breathing is very friendly. This fire that keeps you warm, this sun that keeps you warm, it's very friendly. And so is the grass that you walk upon, and so is the snow that falls down, and so is the rain. Everything about the universe is supportive of you. So see it as a friendly place, rather than a place that is conspiring against you. You are not an organism in this environment. You are an organism/environment. You cannot be disconnected from it ever. So honoring that and recognizing that in your manifestation process, the work that you are doing to attract to yourself that which you desire in your life, you are really manifesting something that is you are already a part of. You're just bringing into your world space that which is already you. So the way to put this principle to work in your life, here are a few suggestions that I would make, is first to make a conscious effort to check yourself when you begin to think in ways that reflect your separateness. When you start seeing something and telling yourself that, I'm not connected to that, or I can kill this, or I can move that, and it won't make any difference. And what difference does it make anyway if we cut down all of these trees, or whatever? Begin to see yourself as someone who is connected to everything in your universe, and that divine force that flows through you also is flowing through all of that.
Second thing I would do is to just contemplate the energy that is your life force. This thing that keeps you alive, that is you in the first place. It's not that bone and gristle and blood and all of that that you are looking at. It is something that is invisible, that is within you, and it is also in all of those things that you see in your environment. I would also begin to practice being gentle and respectful and loving toward the life force, not just in yourself, but in all things. And being respectful of it reminds you that you are in some way connected to it, so that by being kind to others, you are also being kind to yourself. There's something very much truthful in the notion that we are the world. It's more than just a clever song title. It really reflects that we all are a part of everything in this world, that none of us can be disconnected from it. I would also, again, determine that I would spend some time each day alone and in silence, meditating on this principle. And you repeat that affirmation: I am not an organism in an environment. I am an environ-organism. I am connected to it all. And just remind yourself of that. Also, I would make the space of my life as sacred as I possibly can, have as much beauty and sacredness in all things that show up in my life. Each and every one of us really do reflect the totality of humanity. We are all just little slivers in this whole conglomeration called humanity, and that when you take one of us and put a laser beam through it, just like on your credit card, it reflects the whole, and each one of us reflects that whole.
Saint Germain spoke to me and said, it's all you have to do is spend 15 minutes being in a state of appreciation for the I Am presence that you are. Now, one of the things that the I Am discourses taught that I was having trouble with this whole idea of manifesting is written on page 318. And I'd like to give this to you as we get ready to close. The student should constantly look within his human self and see what habits or creations are there that need to be plucked out and disposed of. For only by refusing to any longer allow habits of judging, condemning, and criticizing to exist can he be free. Are you hearing this? The true activity of the student is only to perfect his own world, and he cannot do it as long as he sees imperfection in the world of any of God's children. That includes the person who opened fire in Aurora. That includes Osama bin Laden. That includes Adolf Hitler. Any judgments that we have of judgment, criticism, and condemnation. And I wanted to manifest something so bad for such a long period of time, but the person that was involved in it, I kept having this sense of judgment toward this person. And it wasn't until I was able to say, I accept you for what you are. It's what led me to my father's grave in 1974. And I stood there after being sent there by a series of just absolutely impossible coincidences. I stood there on his grave after being filled with rage and hatred and anger and bitterness towards this man who would walk out on my mother and her 3 young boys. I was the youngest. And I finally found out about his death, that he had been dead 10 years, but I went to his grave in 1974 on August the 30th. And as I walked away from his grave, because I really went there to piss on his grave, I was so just filled with rage in him. And as I walked back to the rent-a-car, something called me back, and I went and stood there looking at this plate on the ground that said Melvin Lyle Dyer, 1914 to 1964. And something came over me. In fact, we've made a film about it, another film called My Greatest Teacher. And I was able to say to my father, from this moment on, I send you love. Who am I to judge you and condemn you? You did what you knew how to do, given the conditions of your life. And I accept you for it. Mark Twain once said that forgiveness is the fragrance Let the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. On the heel that has crushed it. Enjoy it. My greatest teacher. Who was my greatest teacher? After that, my entire life changed. I stopped drinking. I started exercising. My writing shifted. I went back to New York. I was professor at St. John's University in New York City. I took 2 weeks to go down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, checked into the Spindrift Motel, and wrote a book called Your Erroneous Zones in 14 days. 14 days. Today, there's close to 100 million copies in 47 languages around the world. It's, and everything in my life after that shifted. My diet changed, my habits changed, everything turned around because I got the rage out of me. Because in order to attract the elements that are going to bring you the ability to manifest into your life what you want, remember how I opened this program. We do not manifest what we want. That comes from a place of missing. We manifest what we are. The angels who will guide you throughout your life will only be there for you when they recognize themselves in you. And they cannot recognize themselves in you and guide you when you are filled with hatred, anger, judgment, condemnation, bitterness, fear, anxiety, stress. You have to let all of that go and be love. Be in this place of perfect divine love. Love for everything and everyone on our planet. That's self-actualization at work. T.S. Eliot, the great American poet, said, "We shall not cease from exploration, but at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated, but to know it for the first time." I paraphrase that, it's off a little. To know it for the first time. I think that T.S. Eliot might have been speaking about death, but I'm not. I think that we can come to know this place from which we originated, the place to which we return, all of us, by allowing this spark to become something bigger than just an occasional thing where you extend an act of kindness someplace, or you have it at the church or at the mosque or at the synagogue on a holy day or a holy observance, that it can become your way of being. There was a great teacher in India. His name was Vivekananda. Vivekananda came to the West as a young teacher, a very profound teacher. And he was asked the question, but how do you do this? How do you access this higher self? How do you make this your reality? And he said these words to his devotees, and I say them to you. He said, in the springtime, go out and observe the blossoms on the fruit trees. He said, the blossoms vanish of themselves as the fruit grows. And so too will the lower self, the false self, the ego, vanish as the divine grows within you. It's about allowing yourself to recognize you must have this spark because this is what you came from, and this is what you return to. And as this spark becomes a fragment and becomes a section and becomes larger and larger, you reach what I call in Wishes Fulfilled, the third chapter, the highest self. And what is the highest self? This is the one that's going to surprise you a bit. The highest self is the self that you haven't been trained to believe in. You've been trained to believe in your ordinary awareness. Your highest self is where you begin to recognize your connection to your source, to the Tao, to the divine, to God. A book by a man named U.S. Anderson, U.L.S. Anderson, passed away in 1986. Very profound teacher. And he wrote a book called 3 Magic Words. At the very end, he said these words. Chapter 12, the very end of it. It's called The Veil Removed. This is the ineffable secret, the ultimate illumination, the key to peace and power.
You are God. Those are the three magic words. If you will accept this towering truth and dare to stand atop this magnificent pinnacle, universal consciousness will be revealed to you from within. God is there. It is He who peers from behind your eyes, who is your own consciousness, who is your very self. You are not just a part of God, you are altogether God. And God is altogether you. Now, that's scary stuff for a lot of people. We weren't raised to believe that. I'm not saying that you ought to go out into the world and say, excuse me, but you know who you're talking to, that I am God. And the reason that we laugh is because we think of God as the God that we've created in our own image, the God of the ego, the God who's angry, the God who wants special favors, the God who has the ability to heal but withholds it. But there's another word that Jesus used in the New Testament, and this is the God I speak of, quoting him. God is love. And he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in me, and I in him. God is love. Pure, unconditional, blissful, divine love. That's who you are. The second great teaching was a man named Neville Goddard. Passed away in 1972. Lectured over in California, particularly in the 40s and 50s and 60s. I read his book, The Power of Awareness, 7 times. I gave it to each one of my children at Christmas a couple of years ago, and they called me up and they said, Dad, it's great, but I don't understand it. It's a little heavy. I said, well, then maybe it's part of my dharma to make it a little clearer. And chapter 27, the last chapter of his book, The Power of Awareness, it says this: in all of creation, in all of eternity, in all the realms of your infinite being, the most wonderful fact is that which is stressed in the first chapter of this book. You are God. You are the I am that I am. You are consciousness. You are the creator. This is the mystery. This is the great secret known by the seers and prophets and mystics throughout the ages. This is the truth that you can never know intellectually. If you want to understand something intellectually, what you must do is analyze it, come up with a formula for it, study it, look at other experts about it, and come up to a conclusion. If you want to understand something spiritually, you must first experience it. You must come to know this within.
I am personally convinced that everyone has a capacity for greatness that transcends anything they've been taught to believe, that every being who's ever existed is in fact a portion of the all-creating power of intention. Since we're all pieces of the infinite creative source, we should continually be telling ourselves, quote, I came from God, and since I must be like what I came from, I am a piece of the divine, unquote. Trying to imagine the all-creating spiritual force coming up with excuses for anything is impossible because it is creating from its own consciousness. Now put yourself in this picture. While your mind is part of the unlimited source, it becomes limited when you believe it to be fallible, weak, impotent, or any other adjective that misidentifies with creative energy. When you edge God out in this manner, you invite ego, which is known as the false self by spiritual teachers of all persuasions, in. Allow yourself to look through your new lens by acquiring a set of beliefs that includes your spiritual or God-realized nature. It may feel a little unfamiliar or even mysterious at first, but be willing to allow your senses to adjust to this new way of seeing. Transcend the idea that your genetic makeup is static. With your new ability to perceive ego, you'll become a wizard who easily dethrones the dictator of your false self, bypassing early conditioning imposed by people in your environment who have edged God out. As you get comfortable with this new way of seeing yourself, ask yourself the following question. If no one told me who I was, who would I be? Quietly meditate on this by spending some time in the spaciousness of not knowing. Imagine that your subconscious mind is non-existent, and there's no storage receptacle for excuses during your life. There's just an open and inviting clear space inside of you, a tabula rasa or a blank slate with a magical surface that nothing adheres to. You might imagine that your everyday conscious mind simply doesn't absorb the opinions of the folks you grew up with. In this little fantasy, there's never been anyone telling you who you are. So who are you? When I did this exercise, I found that my answer to the above question was quite simple. I would be anything that I and only I decided to be in this moment and all future moments. As the song goes, I've got to be me. And that means jettisoning all of the excuses I've accumulated. My habitual life wouldn't be based upon anyone's early programming, since there wouldn't be anyone who ever told me who I am. Or, as the Tao teaches, quote, look to nature for your sustenance. Look to the great mysterious Tao, or God, that does nothing and leaves nothing undone. Observe how the entire universe and all of these beautiful Tao-centered creatures work, unquote. Tao-centered creatures allow, they trust, they live here in the present moment, and, most assuredly, they have no need for any excuses. I'm sure you're familiar with some variation of this popular excuse, I can't help it, it runs in my family. New biology, however, has proven that beliefs can override DNA. So move what you thought was a fact to the excuse file by changing how you view its authenticity. You can change what you perceive as immutable and beyond your reach by eliminating excuses such as the ones in the genetic excuse category. As my friend Greg Braden writes in his astonishing book, The Spontaneous Healing of Belief, quote, paradigm-shattering experiments published in leading-edge, peer-reviewed journals reveal that we're bathed in a field of intelligent energy that fills what used to be thought of as empty space. Additional discoveries show beyond any reasonable doubt that this field responds to us. It rearranges itself in the presence of our heart-based feelings and beliefs, and this is the revolution that changes everything, unquote. Here are 2 exercises to practice applying these ideas to your genetic program. 1. Be open to the scientifically verified idea that your beliefs have the power to rearrange and change the material world. Start by making this particularly pertinent for you in your physical and personal destiny by contemplating the more things of this nature are possible than you've previously experienced. Allow these new thoughts about your biology to gently enter your belief system. Encourage yourself to consider your beliefs as things that affect you, perhaps even more than physical particles do. If it suits you, you may even see beliefs as non-particles in the non-material or spiritual world. 2. Create an affirmation that attests to this new no-excuses philosophy for genetics. Something from the following list would work fine, but feel free to come up with your own. I can change my body's infirmities by shifting my beliefs. Affirm, I have the power to undo old thoughts about my genetic destiny. Affirm, if I stay with them and live from my heart, my beliefs can inspire new talents if I so desire. Affirm, I can heal anything by healing my beliefs first. Affirm, I intend to keep my beliefs uppermost, and I refuse to blame anything in the material world for any deficiencies in my life.
If you can learn to put your attention on what you want, to ask for it, and to intend that it will attract into your life, and be passionate about it, independent of whether anybody else likes it or doesn't like it, you literally will create it. Because you think, what you think about is what expands. You act upon your thoughts, as it says in the Old Testament. As you think, so shall you be. It is out of that invisible world that you attract things into your life. So that's the good news. Here's the bad news. What you really, 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 four reallys, don't want, you will also get. And this is truly the problem for people who are not good at manifesting into their life. Now, I'm speaking about this not as a materializer, but as someone who in 57 years has been able to literally attract whatever I've put my attention on in my life. And it's not because I'm more intelligent, I'm more blessed, I'm luckier, I'm richer, I'm anything like that. It's because I have followed these principles in my life. If you understand that what you think about
is what expands. As you think, so shall you be. This is like every field of spiritual teaching and discipline talks about the power of thoughts to create into the material world. And if your thoughts are on what you don't want, and that's where you've put your inner energy, on what you don't want, then what you don't want has to materialize into the physical world. So if you think that you can lose weight by putting your attention on despising being fat, you have to understand that despising being fat is what you will continue to manifest into your life. And if you put your attention on not having enough money, being poor, and disliking being poor, and expect to manifest prosperity into your life from an inner energy system which says, I despise being poor, you have to understand that despising being poor is what you will continue to manifest into your life. And if you put your attention on what is in your life, just what is what will continue to manifest into your life. And if you put your attention on what always has been, which is what the tribe will tell you to do, we've always done it this way. If your attention is on what always has been or on the circumstances of your life, then the circumstances of your life and what always has been is what you will continue to manifest into your life. So what we have to do, and this is like a multiple choice question. It's A, B, C. You can put your attention on what you want. You can put your attention on what you don't want. That's B. Or you can put your attention on what they want for you. That's C. You got those three choices. And if you don't understand that A is the right answer, this isn't going to help you. You have to think of your thoughts and your inner world and your capacity to be able to attract things into your life. You have to think of these things as like currency.
The last 5 minutes of your day, you were to say, I feel great. I feel joyful. I experienced what I want. I met the person that I wanted to meet. I was able to get the job that I wanted to get. And you start saying to yourself, this is how I feel. Now you've got 8 hours, and your subconscious mind believes that that's who you are and what you want. And for the next 8 hours, it begins to align you in the mysterious way that none of us can understand, that allows for the manifestation and the materialization to take place. It comes from the feelings. Feelings are the manifestors within your life and within your body. And you go to those feelings and stay with that. Does that make sense to you? Because to me, I do it every single night. I refuse to spend the last 5 minutes before I enter into that world in which my subconscious mind is going to believe that I want to go over all the things that are wrong and all the things I don't like and all the stuff that is bothering me. Instead, I go off to sleep into that beautiful world of peace and joy and fulfillment, because that's what I feel, and I created it in my mind.